Okay, let's take the second prompt. Socrates' refutation of the second definition of piety, 9e through 11b. This is really a very, very famous question. And at 10a in the book, page 12, Socrates asks, is the pious being loved by the gods because it's pious, or is it pious because it's being loved by the gods? That is, it's loved by God. And put in the modern terminology, Socrates' point is that according to the divine command theory, that is, this is a theory of ethics, that is, what makes things right or wrong is that God commands it, one of the following has to be true. Either God commands certain actions because they're morally right, or actions are morally right because they're the ones that God commands. Now notice this is an either or, and sometimes we call these kinds of questions dilemmas. Sometimes we even say that someone is caught on the horns of the dilemma. You know, we have a modern expression, guys caught between a rock and a hard place. Maybe it's not the idea is neither alternative is right. Sorry, not right, but a good one. It's not an acceptable one. So now at this point, the details of the argument become pretty hard to follow. But on a high level, we see the argument supposed to proceed this way. We start with that either or. Either God commands actions because they're morally right, or actions are morally right because God commands them. And the argument goes, that is, if God commands actions because they're morally right, then the divine command theory is defective. What's the divine command theory? That's just Euthyphro's now definition that what makes something right or wrong is that all the gods agree or disagree with it. Well, then he says, okay, so if the first alternative is true, then the definition is bad. And then he argues that if number 3, if the second alternative, if what makes things right is that God commands them, then the divine command theory, the definition is defective. Therefore, the definition is defective. The divine command theory is wrong. And this is a good pattern of argument. If you guys want to look, I put it down there just to point out that the logic here is not the problem. The logic is, okay, this is a perfectly reasonable, correct inference. You have two alternatives. If one implies something, and if either P or Q, one of those two things has to be true. If P implies something else and Q also implies something else, no matter what, that something else is being implied by that, so R follows. That's the logic. So the logic works. That is, the conclusion follows from those premises, but for an argument to be good, remember, the premises have to be true. Euthyphro doesn't understand why anyone would think that the first premise is true. In fact, he seems not to understand what it means. And from 10c to 11b, it's the middle of page 14 to the middle of page 16, Socrates explains to Euthyphro, he explains number 1 to Euthyphro, and he goes on to convince him that 1, 2, and 3 are true. What is Socrates' defense of these premises? And let me tell you, don't get discouraged if you can't figure it out. Do your best, because let me tell you, it's really tough. And then I want you to ask yourself, do you think Socrates has done a good job there defending them? And you're going to read stuff about led, being led, seen, being seen. Try to figure out what he's defending and how he's defending. And I wouldn't spend hours on this, but spend a little time at least trying to get some of the answers to those questions. Because let me tell you, they're really tough, and I'm not sure there is. But that's where the next one comes up. So spend some time on that, and then go to number 3. Stephen Kahn, who's a professor of philosophy at the Graduate Center, this CUNY's Graduate Center, presents an argument to support some of these premises. In fact, His argument is contained in the handout that I distributed. It's also in the reading section of Blackboard. So if you're wondering where it is, go back to Blackboard. If you go down here to readings, click on it, and you can see Stephen Kahn, God, Morality. You can get a copy over there. Let's go back to the assignment. Okay. And I think what I'm missing here is I think I did not put up the argument. Take a look at my lecture notes on this, because I do post my lecture notes a particular argument that I think is Kahn's argument. And I will go back and I will make sure that I've posted the notes. In fact, let me go over to my notes and I will show you where we have that. Lectures, lecture slide. I haven't posted your copy yet. That's why I'm going to the originals. But okay, but you're going to see this argument. Let me make it a little bit bigger. See? God commands us to do things because they're morally right. If morally right is the same thing as commanded by God, which is what Euthyphro's second definition is telling us, then God commands us to do things because they're commanded by God. The idea is if the two things are the same, you can substitute one for the other anywhere. But it's not the case that God commands us to do things because they're commanded by God. Therefore, the morally right is not identical with commanded by God. So now this is slide 5. So take a look. I will post slide 5 for you. Now let's go back to the prompt. And he explains this argument. Let me just take a look. It looks like I overlooked it, so you guys have good reason for not doing the assignment, this part of the assignment. And then I'm going to ask you, what's his defense of premise 2? If God commands actions because they're morally right, then the divine command theory is defective. Okay, I see what I was doing here. If we go back to this argument, you didn't even have the argument up here. Either A or B. If God commands actions because they're morally right, then the divine command theory is defective. Okay? So the question is, on that argument, let's scroll up a little bit. What is Kahn's defense of premise number 2? The one that's listed there. Is it a good defense? Think about it. Read it slowly. Go up there. Read that premise. If God commands actions because they're morally right, then the divine command theory is wrong. Then Euthyphro's definition is wrong. Is this really a good defense? How does Kahn defend that premise 3? The next one, if actions are right because God commands them, then the divine command theory is defective. I think you'll find a defense of that. And he seems to be assuming that God could command stealing, adultery, murder. Is it really possible for God, a perfectly moral being, to command stealing, adultery, murder? Think about that. Because these are things that we'll be talking about on Sunday. I want you to think about them and write down an answer now. And 6, there's a story in the Bible, the Old Testament, and a similar story in the Quran about Abraham, or from the Quran, Ibrahim, being tested by God with a commandment to kill his son, depending on which version. If it's the Old Testament, it's Isaac. If it's the Quran, it's Ishmael. And I have to apologize to the members of the class who are, and all the members of the Islamic faith, the Muslims. I think I was corrected last semester. Quran should be Quran spelled? If not, let me know in class. I'll get that straight and I'll fix it up for you. Okay, so here's the question I want you to answer over there, number 6. Did God's commandments make it morally right for Abraham or Ibrahim to kill his son? Did the fact that God commanded make it morally right? And what should Abraham, Ibrahim, whoever the God, whatever you're going to call him, what should he have done? What were his moral obligations? And what does that say about this whole notion that doing what God commands, what the religion tell you is right? And finally, I want you to think about it and take your time. These are complicated questions. Is Kant's version of Plato's argument a good one? Does it establish that religion does not determine morality? Okay, I want you to take your time, think about that. Now there's the version of the argument. Let's just roll back up here. There's the version of the argument that I'll give you the cursor, right? Starts there, ends there. And then you'll have the slides to take a look at. Right, in particular this slide that we'll be talking about. But I want you to think about it. You can see what I have to say. I will post these slides if I haven't. In fact, while I have you on the line here, let me take a look at my lecture notes section. Have I posted it yet? Now, I've only posted part 1, so I will, after I post this video, I will put part 2 up there so you can take a look at that. And I will also be giving you a narrated version of those slides at some point. Might not be before class, but I want you guys to spend some time thinking about this for class because we will be talking about it on Sunday. Put your prompts up there, and then I want you to come back, a day or 2 later and see what your classmates have posted and respond to them. And if we don't have enough time to respond before class, part of this assignment is to come back after this Sunday. And we're talking about, what was it, last one was the 4th, so this is, let me check the calendar. We're talking about November, it was November 3rd was last class, this is for November 10th. So I want you to be prepared for November 10th to do this in class, and if you don't have time to come back, I want you to go back after November 10th and put some comments in, just trying to figure out who's right. Your classmates right? You right? If you don't think they're right, explain to them what's going on. So that's this part of the assignment.